That's no moon. It's a space station.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. A few quick announcements, or one quick announcement anyway. We just wrapped up Rebels of Disclosure 2025. It was our fourth conference in Grafton. It was a huge success. And if you're interested in catching the replay, you can do so at journeytotruth.online. The replay for the entire event, including the opening and closing ceremonies, is only $50. So take advantage of that. It was really high quality content, amazing lineup of speakers, and it was such a beautiful experience. So if you want to see what that was like, take advantage of that. That link is below. And also, we have launched a pre-sale for our Hawaii conference in 2026, April 20th through the 24th. Somewhere around there, I think, if I got those dates right, but that information is on our website as well, journeytotruth.online, and more information will be coming out about that shortly. But with that out of the way, today we are joined by our friend Kerry Cassidy. She's been on our show a number of times now, and we recently interviewed her for our upcoming Secret Space Program documentary, which is in the works, and we're going to hopefully get that out by the end of the year. So that's all baking in the background. But Kerry, she's a host of Project Camelot, as most of you know, but she also writes amazing articles that I don't know if everybody reads on her Substack, but I get the email notifications, and every once in a while one just strikes me, and I feel like she's on to something. So her most recent article, or one of her most recent ones, was about the gray human hybrid program, which is a hot topic, a very controversial topic. Dr. Sala just wrote an article about it, and maybe Carrie's article was a response to Sala's article. But basically, it's how the human race has been hybridized over time, and there's a number of brilliant points you made in your article. So, Carrie, I'll let you explain to the audience like what you think is going on with this gray hybrid program and what inspired you to write the article.
Okay, thanks. I talked about these pieces in the article on various shows over the years. And then what happened was somebody wrote to me, and I guess I don't know if the Michael Salla article came out recently or what, but they were, sort of triggered by the Michael Salla article and also things he said about other researchers and what they had to say. So I don't think I'll use names necessarily. But then I realized that my information was not the same as everyone else's. And so then I decided, well, I better put an article out there and just talk about this because usually it's wrapped into various, like I said, interviews in small pieces. And so I thought having just one article, and I didn't put everything there. I put some important points that I thought people need to be aware of. And over the years, 20 years, plus my own alien abduction, whatever you want to call that, and even my lab abduction type thing, then I decided that I needed to kind of just put that stuff out there. So, not sure where you want me to start as far as the points in the article. If you want to ask me about the points in the article one by
Right.
one or something like that.
Yeah, okay, so I guess this is I think the highlight in your article, what I found the most interesting is that, the human race has already been hybridized, and this isn't some, like, looming threat, like this narrative going around, like, we have to really watch out for. You made a brilliant article, like, this has happened, and it's not just the Greys, and it's other off-world groups too, so maybe you can kind of explain to our audience and us, like, what you've seen over the years and why you believe that this has been ongoing for a long time.
Well, first of all, let me say that, the Oceana Dean Voyager books, Voyager 1, Voyager 2, are linked on my website. So the front page of my website, which is projectcamelotportal.com. And I traveled to India with her and her group. I interviewed her. I did a 6-hour interview with her on those books and her material many years ago, but it's still very important, good information because it's all historical. It's all about the history of humanity, but it goes back way before the Bible. It goes back, I guess, millions of years, actually. And it is said that humanity originally originated on Lyra. And that perhaps most humanoid races come from there. But there's okay, so we have been invaded and she goes through a saga. Now, this is not her information. This is coming from a download from what are known as the guardian races over humanity, which is not the same as the Galactic Fed or Federation or, other kinds of, kind of collections and all this different thing. There's lots of names for various races and groups of races and so on. The Galactic Federation has been infiltrated and by what we call negative ETs, satanic organizations, uh, various things like that. And so some people like to think that that's all good, but it's not. And that's a very important point when you're looking at this material. The other thing is that of the races that have come over the centuries, and when you start reading it, it's actually very difficult reading because it's so complex and there's so many names, so you're kind of over the years, I've read it over and over again, so I'm more accustomed to it. You gotta accustom yourself to the language, to the use of language, and, there is actually a glossary of terms out there who was made by a woman named Lisa Renee, and that's quite a good glossary because it actually relates to the information in Ashiana Dean's books. Lisa Renee is someone who claims to have also gotten downloads similar to Ashiana Dean. I'm not going to get into who's right and who's wrong about every detail. Okay, that's your choice. You can see what resonates. But the bottom line is that there are two people that got some of this information. And when I was on the trip to India, was getting downloads from these galactics, to the guardians. And and various beings that seemed to be traveling along with our group. It was kind of a bizarre psychic experience. And we also got involved in creating portals, opening portals into other dimensions and reopening them because some negative races had closed them in India. So I had a really amazing experience in one particular kind of portal area that we were creating a portal and we were all standing there and I don't think we had our hands linked, but we are all kind of in together in this situation. And I actually standing there involved in the situation, left my body consciously, went somewhere and then came back fully conscious. And that was a really kind of bizarre experience, but it had to do with I probably went through the portal we were creating, opening or whatever.
Right.
So it was had a huge impact. It's just evidence, more evidence that this stuff exists, that humans can access it, and so on. To get back to the, great now there's the Gray Human Hybrid Program, which is it seemed to be very focused initially with, introduction to, Eisenhower and back in the day, Truman, and them allowing the Greys to come in and abduct humans in exchange for technology. And then what happened is they broke the rules. They weren't supposed to kill them, eat them, or do anything higher. But as it happened, they ended up to break every treaty they ever made. And then this information comes from Dan Burish way back in the day. And he talked about how they had made a final agreement with them and asked them to go down to Central and South America, and they would give them carte blanche down there if they would leave the humans in the US alone, which, look, I'm just telling you what the agreement was. I'm not saying it's a good one
Right.
or even a bad one. I'm just saying this is what happened. So consequently, if you ever saw, I talk about the TV, the movie, actually not TV, the X-Men movie called Logan. Logan is all about that. Okay. So there's a little a child from, I don't know if she's from Mexico or where she's from, but South America, south of the border. And she is brought into a program, and that's where Logan meets her. He goes to that same kind of program, and so on. So what happened was this is involved in all the gray human hybrid children and adults, because now this has been going on for like 40, maybe more like 60 years. Okay. So they have been down there abducting. And if you've ever, if you ever looked at the videos of Jaime Maussan, he shows you and others that they're oftentimes in Central and South America, their whole skies are full of UFOs that you can see with the naked eye. And I've seen the films of them that Jaime has, used to play at conferences, doesn't anymore. Kind of interesting. But yeah, so that was very obvious that they were down there in spades, and they found that the more indigenous peoples that are closer to what are called root races on Earth are better for hybridization. And this actually relates to genetics in general. Like if you have a plant and you want to hybridize it, the closer it is to its original sort of roots is, geneticists can tell you this stuff. It's you get a stronger result from a hybrid. Now, what happened with the white race, predominantly white, Anglo-Saxon, that's in the United States, and United States became more of a melting pot as time went on, so we're not so much that way now, but back in the day. So the white race is very hybridized already, all right, from Europe and being hybridized back then, and so on and so forth. So this is what her books talk about. It talks about battles between these various ETs, off-world cultures coming in, genetically manipulating our genome, making us related to them in many cases, and our offspring. So, but to get back to the gray human hybrid, so it seems that the people who were coming out when Michael Salla was talking and when he was talking about that program, he was only talking about the gray human hybrid program. Now, there are multiple races of grays, and many of them are AI. Okay. So there's straight ahead what we call programmable biological entities. And those are not the abductors, actually. Those are just little mechanical robots, if you want to think of it, in essence.
Right.
And they're run by AI, and they're also run by, under orders from the Draco, from the reptilians, from the tall, not the tall whites, but the Nordics and those kinds of, blonde type of races that are also, those are actually like the race from Aldebaran. So I've studied this kind of in depth because I was dealing with Mark Richards, Captain Mark Richards, and interviewing him for 5 years. And I did 12 interviews over a period of 5 years. So like once every 6 months, I would go to the prison and interview him in person. So I was asking him questions to do with different humans. He is, for example, the raptors. So he was looked over by the raptors when he was first born. They were in the sky, apparently. I don't know if it was his mother who told him or he just knew psychically or what. But what happens is that if you look at every human, you might have wondered, how is it that our genome is so varied that we all look so different? We all come from different bloodlines and mixtures of bloodlines over the ages. And so this is what's happening. Then you can actually look at humans and see which so-called aliens of the usual suspects, if you will, we're related to. And there's a very strong portion that are very much hybrids of the reptilians. So reptilian human hybrids, like the Bushes. The Bush's genome demonstrates this. I was told by a whistleblower. You'll never see anyone publish the actual Bush, line because it's so reptilian. And the thing about the reptilian human hybrids is that they are very aggressive. They tend to be the king, the sort of CEOs of industry. They are at the top of the food chain because that's their training. They're training from a hierarchical society to run things and to lead. All right. So that's also where the adrenochrome highway, which I call it, comes from, where you get certain races that have been hybridized with reptilians and Draco, and also even the mantids who used to eat humans. So this is where humanity kind of went off the rails, and this is where the Jewish religion, the part of the, I think they say it's in the. Someone said, well, I was listening to something said it's actually in the Talmud. So they talk about, their genetic history is in essence, they don't say it's reptilian, I don't think, but I'm not sure what they say, but they prey on other humans. It's insane. Most races don't prey on themselves, as you can appreciate, right? So just one second here. You can ask a question at any time.
I mean, you're on such a roll right now. It's fascinating.
Right.
So, well, it's kind of a pet subject of mine because it also gets into people that are obsessed with the Bible and Adam and that whole bloodline, because they don't seem to realize that humans, and Adam in particular, that all those Bible stories are, you might call them parables, you might call them, uh, they're stories, but they mean something. They're not meaningless. So when they say that, they found the women, beautiful or whatever, and then they came on to them and so on and so forth, they are talking actually about a genetic engineering program. They're not actually talking about this 9-foot being having sex with this, 5-foot being, I mean, get a grip on reality. Okay. So understand that this is really what happened to humans, and that the Adam Eve story is a portion of that story. And much lies and misconceptions kind of wrapped into all of that. I'm sorry if it upsets people to hear this. But according to the information that I've studied and that Ashiana Dean and the Guardian Races released to her and was put into these very intricate books going back into the history of humanity, you wouldn't believe how many races hybridized us. Okay. And so it's also, I mean, let me give an example, because this is he's very open about it. Simon Parks, he acknowledges, at least he publicly, and he's a politician initially, so his whole audience in England knew about it. He would say that his father was a reptilian, his mother was a mantid. Okay. So that's a hybrid. So he's a hybrid, reptilian mantid hybrid. Now he tends to want to emphasize his mantid side at this time. So I don't want to, go into whatever details he's, and he's a good friend, and whatever he says about himself, that's fine. But the reality is that when you look at, for example, the German bloodline, okay, so they have a lot of reptilian in theirs, as well as the Jewish, okay, have that. Anunnaki in particular. So Anunnaki are actually Pleiadian reptilian hybrids. Okay. The Anunnaki, because they actually left the Pleiadians and they went to Nibiru, and they were invaded by the Draco reptilians and converted, because the Draco reptilians are expert geneticists, and they're always trying to infiltrate and take over. They're a marauding species, and they go searching the galaxies for planets where they can take them over, use them as food, sex objects, you name it, where they are in control, and they colonize them, I guess you might say, in a very kind of diabolical way. But we do colonization back in the old days. They were colonizing. And you could even say that possibly some of these where they're letting, where we're having, not tourists, but they're having refugees, supposedly from a war or whatever, the earth change or something like that. And then the whole slew of them goes over. Like right now, England is being inundated by Ukrainians. Okay. They're letting them in. They're doing that on purpose because they want to beef up the English bloodline, which has become quite weak. Okay. Too hybridized, too weak, needs, a jump start. Well, they're getting a jump start from the, what are in essence the Ukrainians, which are the, what do they call that? You know what I'm saying? It's a certain kind of, it's the Tartars and Slavic.
Slavic.
So,
Okay.
Yeah.
and this is also why you got the so much experimentation underground in Ukraine on the Slavic peoples, because they find that they have different genetics that allow them to handle certain things like the COVID virus that couldn't take them down, couldn't take over their bodies completely, because they have a very strong, and I have Slavic, just look at my cheekbones. And the Russians, when I went to Russia, thought I was Russian. They start talking to me in Russian. They wouldn't believe me when I said I wasn't Russian, all this kind of thing. So you have your bloodline. You can't, you have what you have. And whatever, so these are the traits. There are traits that go along with these things. And so, every race is gifted. I mean, there's so many gifts in each, as you can appreciate. And it's called the rainbow, coalition or whatever, is all the different races, all the different colors or hues. Hue, man of many hues, man of many colors, genetically engineered. Okay.
Right.
So, and for those that are interested, there is an interview with a reptilian. It's a woman reptilian. And I think she herself is a hybrid. You might have heard of it.
I've heard it.
She goes on and on about how, the snakes, the reptilians created humanity, all this stuff. See, but every single race tries to say they create humanity. That's
Right.
another thing that goes along with that bullshit. But they didn't, okay, because a lot of the original strain of humanity, like I say, it does appear we came from Lyra. And maybe before that, we came from another solar system altogether. And there's zillions of actually human races, meaning hybridized human or humanoids, even humanoids. So like I have some Pleiadian, I've been told. Okay, that's what, William Tompkins said and other people. So, and I also had a very tricky thing happen with Billy Meyer, where I had a photograph that was taken of me next to the silver star emblem on his land. And the entire photograph was silver with me in it. And none of my photographs in my camera ever had that before or since. Okay, just one photograph. It's a trip.
Right.
And I know that it was the Pleiadians saying, hey, you're one of us. Hello, whatever. Yeah. So they like to do things like that. So George Green talked about that, the Pleiadians and his relationship to them as well, who was a lovely man. And I encourage you to look for my interviews with him. I have quite a few.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so I might be getting off the track, but I'm coming back to the gray human hybrid thing. So understand that this is actually the powers that be know exactly what I'm talking about. They're engineering this, okay? And by the way, it does appear that right now, the Chinese, the Koreans, the Japanese, and probably some other races, but I'm more aware of them because I've run into them in like Egypt, their children. And the children are not short anymore. They're tall and they have, slightly different features and so on and so forth. You can spot a hybrid, okay, very well, okay. And you can also spot someone who's more indigenous, as you know. So it started out with some root races that were like Aborigine, they are root race, okay. And the Indians, Native Americans in United States, we call them Native Americans, but down in Mexico and South America, they call them Indian. And when they get slightly hybridized, they're called mestizo. And so there's all these different things where, the Aztecs and the Mayan, those were root races. And then you have, you get your hybrids. So, and one of the things I often talk about is that how when Trump is coming into office, the borders were being completely inundated by these, what I said, these hybrids that were actually acting like they were sort of stoned or zombified. They were literally being under orders from the Greys to rush the border. And that's been going on since 2016 or so. And so I think even Trump, I mean, I'm just going to be honest about it. As far as I'm concerned, they could have stopped them. Now, I had dreams going back. I have precog dreams, and my dreams come true. Okay, I don't think they always did, but they certainly do more so now. So I have dreams of the future, and then I see them happen. And so one of my major dreams was that the Chinese would be crossing the border, young Chinese men, military men, and invading the United States. And this was several years before it was ever even a thought that they were going to be at our borders invading. And I was being interviewed by Gaia TV. I was in Colorado. I stayed overnight at the airport, of all places, and had a really early morning flight. I woke up in the middle of the morning, really, with this horrendous dream that we were being invaded by Chinese troops and that they were right outside the hotel where I was staying with guns and everything. And I woke up and was sick to my stomach. I mean, super sick. I couldn't handle it. And I thought, oh my God. And the one thing that came through in my dream was they let them in. And what have they done? They've let them in.
Right.
So this is where we're at. Okay, just saying. And I don't know if I skipped over too many things.
Yeah. So what you're talking about is an invasion under the guise of immigration, and you're saying that illegal aliens could technically mean aliens in the sense that they're a true hybrid that's being allowed into our country. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah. The X-Men scenario is real. Okay. Now these illegal aliens, as we call them, are, I guess, again, a lot of them are gray human hybrids, meaning they're going to have some skill sets that come from the grays, like being able to move objects with their mind is very easy for them, and others. Now, every single one of us has superpowers that allow us to do all kinds of things, but we haven't really actualized this. And part of the pressure, it's a principle. You take this stew and you put it in the pressure cooker, when you do that.
Right.
And what you do, you put pressure on on the races. And what they do, and this is an Illuminati principle, is it forces them to actualize their superpowers. So I'm not saying it's not a good thing. Okay. It's really fucked up. And it's how they treat their children. They torture them literally to bring out their superpowers. Okay. To make them smarter than they would normally be. So this is their process. You don't have to do it by negative reinforcement, which is their principle. You can do it, obviously, by positive, right? But there is a whole school of thought that this works and that they prefer to use it because they're into torture anyway and the whole thing.
And they're psychopaths.
Yeah. So I'm just saying that this is, if you understand the principles and the package, you understand what choices are being made. Now, yes, they're going to get rid of a lot of the illegal aliens. Bush is, deporting certain races and certain groups. But it's not an accident that he was in office for a little while. He closed the border and then there was just a trickle, right? And then he got out of office because they forced him out, really, and they had to run again. This American political system, which is insane, but nonetheless.
Right.
And then he has to run again 4 years later. Well, so that during that time, there was a lot less, immigration. so-called. And then when he finally came back in, and now they've closed it again in theory. But you got to understand, they're not going to find all of them. In those 4 years, a lot of them came in as teenagers. They probably got married and had kids, whatever it is. I'm just saying this kind of thing is going on in every country. And a lot of the, what we call refugees from countries where there's a war, like even Syria and okay, the Earth is a huge hybridization program. It's a plan, and they have been planning this and doing these plans forever. And so, certain strains are being allowed to increase and, mix with other strains, be encouraged to do so. I mean, they have a whole system, the Illuminati, as to getting people married. They have what they call, you might have heard of it. It's the red. You marry the red with the black, and you get the white, I think is how it works. And these are not the colors of their skin. This is their genetics. I am a black. Okay. A redhead is a red. Okay. So what you will find is arranged marriages. The people don't know they're arranged necessarily, but they've been orchestrated. It's like, what do they call? There's a movie in which this orchestration is sort of talked about. God, I can't remember it. Okay, well, whatever.
Adjustment Bureau?
What?
Like the Adjustment Bureau, where they're like
It might be that one.
nuts.
Yeah, it's it's got that male actor that's quite well known.
Matt Damon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
It's his
So
favorite movie of
this
Calgary.
stuff, I mean, it may not be carried out quite like that movie, but it's definitely, part of it.
Mhm.
So Bloodlines is huge because they're really obsessed with this genetic program into getting a super race. Okay, that's where the secret space program and their obsession with creating a Superman, like Hitler
Right.
wanted to do, okay, which is a race. According to Mark Richards, what they want is a race of passive super soldiers, but they want more than that. So, for example, they have found that certain races have a proclivity for certain things, like being a precog or being able to manipulate high tech, right? So, for example, the Irish have found to have special skills in this area, and they're just born with them. It's because it's part of their race and their racial line or genetics, whatever you want to say, and so on. So,
Right.
yeah.
So, yeah, there's a lot here. So, have you seen the movie? Have either of you seen the movie The Gorge? It just came out on Apple
Yeah,
TV.
Yeah, Amanda and I just watched it like a couple months ago. It's so good.
So
Really good.
we don't know where that takes place, but it could be somewhere in the Ukraine or Germany or on over there. And
they don't say where it
they,
is.
they don't
right?
say, but spoiler alert, it literally is about this breeding program that took place after World War II in 1947, and they've been keeping these private sector has been keeping it a secret all these years, and they have them guarding this gorge or whatever where these experimentations are being played out.
These,
So
like creatures are coming up out of
yeah,
the gorge and you have to stop.
right.
but it's ultimately what they discover once they go down there, spoiler alert, is that it's a super soldier program
Right.
that they're creating these. So that's like
Yeah,
major
there's
disclosure.
a movie called
Right.
Universal Soldier that also
Right.
reveals the
Mhm.
Nazi plan. And don't forget that they had a whole plan during the time of the Nazis in which young, certain bloodline, again, girls, were actually became like baby factories, and they had arranged marriages to create, that. Okay, now what that really was, I believe, was to look like a being from Aldebaran. So the Aldebaran, which are humanoid reptilian hybrids from another planet. And there's also a movie, a TV series. It's a short series called The Event, which I talk about in many interviews, and that Gordon Duff reinforced that it's true, and other people. So I know that it's true. Okay, so what happens is I don't know why well, what happened with the beings from Aldebaran is apparently they destroyed 2 of their planets, and they came here to move their peoples here until they could also find other places to colonize. And in exchange, they gave us access to certain places in and outside our solar system that we could colonize. Okay, so there was sort of an exchange going on. But what's really interesting about the event is some point in the story, they find out that their bloodline, their sort of the type of hybrid they are, is actually detrimental to the normal human. Okay, it's a subplot, and a lot of people kind of miss it, so you have to pay attention when you watch it. But the reality is that there's a message there because that actually is a true thing. So that not everyone can coexist physically as a hybrid next to certain other races. Like it could be slightly detrimental. Like there's some genetics are more powerful than others. You might understand what I'm saying here.
Yeah.
And then of course the sort of machismo or the when they act like they're better than you and all that kind of thing, or they could kill you and feed on you. So there's these secret things that the rabbis in Israel know all about, okay, and probably practice this shit behind the scenes. I mean, it's like incredible. This hybridization program that is humanity. Now, according to James of the Wingmakers, and I got into that a long, long time ago. I'm back in touch now as it happens because I'm working on a movie with him, sort of. He's a very secretive person. But he said he had the Wingmakers were saying he revealed this group called the Wingmakers that come from our distant past, we may be related to a lot of them, or they may be related to a lot of us, however you want to put it. And they said that the plan for our race of humanity, such as it is, if you want to call it a race when it's actually misconception, but nonetheless, humanity, as we call it, is planned to be merged with 7 other species, ones we haven't even met yet. And maybe AI as well. So I'm just saying this is what was in the Wingmakers material, which was kind of mind-blowing back when I read it a long time ago. And that was even before Camelot. So, that means over 20 years ago. So this is not a unusual idea.
So what do you think about the theory that humans are grays are us from the future?
Well, I think that's a bunch of bullshit primarily, but let me say this much. It kind of comes from Dan Burish, actually. It comes from this idea of the, I forget what they're called, but there are 2 strains, as I recall, of grays that go back, really, really far, P2 and P1 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And this has been a long time since we went over this material, but it is in Camelot, so you can go back to
I remember that from his interview. Yeah.
And they come, from many star systems away and so on and so forth at this point. But it's not just the grays, it's also the Nordics. So in theory, if you want to believe this, which I don't quite go along with completely because it doesn't jive with some of the other information I have, but everyone choose your, what you like. But it was that there was 2 races of grays, the P52s and the P30 somethings. And they were kind of like a little bit different because of their development over the centuries. And the Nordics. So there were 3 paths during a sort of time of cataclysm where different strains of humanity chose different paths. Supposedly, this is the story. And so they went underground the ones that are grays, this is how they tell the story, went underground. But another thing about the grays is that they have genetically engineered their cells not to be emotional. So take emotion out of the picture, but emotion is water. It, simultaneously, the
Right.
word water. So they lost the resilience of their skin, and so they became all this shrunken horribleness. But it may be true of a small group. I don't think it was the predominant thing, because when I look around me, that's not what I see. Okay, I see all these what's a little more predominant in the Ashana Dean books, which is these visiting races hybridizing humans, and humans reflecting the hybridization in the way they look and all that. So, you can decide. But Nordics was one of them. The Nordics apparently didn't stay here, didn't go into underground bases, preserved their, genome to such a degree that they maintained their emotionality and so on and so forth, and intelligence. And they went somewhere to hide during the cataclysms or something,
So,
but off planet.
Aaron, do you have any questions before I keep going? I know
There's about
you.
a million questions.
Right.
There's a lot here. So, a lot of people out there seem to pin everything on the grays and again, like you said, there's like thousands of species of what you could call the grays, like have that look to them, but they're all different and they're from different
Yeah,
places.
and for example, the Zetas are gray reptilian.
Right. And they're not even all from Zeta Reticuli.
And they're not biological
different.
programmable entities, but they're also tricksters, and they lie to humanity.
Right.
So they're, people like to categorize the Zetas are the good ones. That's bullshit.
Right.
It's absolutely been proven that's not true. And they're wrong about a lot of things. So, all I'm saying is that, there are certain, there's a certain race of, I'm sorry, ask your question, because I was
just, my point is just that people like to oversimplify things a lot, as if there's just the grays, and it's like, well, no, there's like thousands and there's tons of, and they have that gray look, but there's, they're slightly different. Like you look at the beings that Whitley Strieber interacted with, they have a certain look. You look at different contactees and the depictions that they draw or that they describe, and they're slightly different. You got Aleister Crowley with the lamb being that it looks kind of grayish, but it has its own little unique look that's different as well. And it's like, these aren't all the same race.
Right.
And like you said, many of them are these AI robot beings. They're not even a normal organic being, and they're just kind of used to do these like dirty jobs and tasks and things. And I think supposedly the reptilians.
Well, yeah, I mean,
use
the way
them
Mark
to do
Richards talks about it is, generally speaking, the grays, and this is just a general statement, but the grays report up the line to the reptilians, and above that, the Draco. So there's a pecking order,
right,
in that.
right. It just gets confusing because I think if you want to say the grays as the beings that have been doing many of these abductions and working under the reptilians, I should say, it's like, okay, that's one group, or maybe there's a few that fit into that. But then I've heard many contactees that describe these supposedly benevolent beings that they're in contact with, that they're Search Star family, and then they look like a gray being, and they're like, oh, they're from Andromeda.
There's also the tall oranges that are usually more in charge than the shorter ones.
Mm-hmm.
There are little tiny ones, and I've said this before, but I was on with John Edwards at his ranch in Arizona, and these two little grays came and looked around the corner. So when you're looking behind me, like if there was some grays, they got caught on the camera, on the cam. And I didn't even notice it. Other people noticed it. And then we examined the footage, and indeed they were there. And a certain TV show, paid me for that footage.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I still have it, of course, but I'm just saying that it's on my website. You can watch it and determine what you're seeing. One is taller than the other, and they're very, very skinny, and they're very, very small. So
Yeah.
they're a certain kind of being. Now, whether they really were grays or not, because underneath his, Arizona ranch, which had tons of portals, because I'm a sensitive, and I could walk around, and we walked around the ranch, and I could see where there was all the portals, and they had all sorts of beings and all sorts of craziness coming in through the portals. A
Right.
little like Skinwalker Ranch, which is
Skinwalker.
also one of those places.
Bradshaw Ranch.
And the Greys tend to like to mess with humans in these
Yep.
places. Okay.
Right.
Mess with their minds, screw with them, do whatever they do.
I've heard many stories of they're trying to like mind control people, like Jason.
Yeah, it's a mind control. A lot of mind control
Yeah.
going along with these programs.
So-
But there are the reptilians that are generally above the Greys, though,
Yeah.
right? For the
Yeah.
most part.
They're as a
Draco.
pet.
Yeah, reptilians. Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on all the races on the planet being, I mean, you kind of touched on this, but in my opinion, this is what's happening. All the races are different genetic experiments, right? From different races. And the reason that these religions were created so that people wouldn't marry outside of their religion is so the experiment wouldn't be contaminated, right? And
Yeah,
eventually,
you could definitely look at it that way.
yeah, I mean, have you heard anything like that before?
Well, it's kind of obvious. I mean, to me, religion and also, the Jesuits infesting the schools around the world,
Mhm.
Especially the Catholic religion. It's all about controlling the different, factions and religions, and yes, stopping intermarriage, that being a big thing, but it didn't really work actually in the
Right.
end. But it worked to a degree, you can see that, right? And there's still a selection, what you might call a selection process going on. Even subtly, when sometimes you get two people together and they can't have a child because their genetics don't match, that kind of thing. So, there's those kinds of more rigid rules or boundaries. But there's also, as I say, these programs that go on in wealthy, especially the wealthy and the upper classes, choosing, to limit what a wealthy certain bloodline can marry into and all of that. So that's part of that as well.
Right. They don't just do that from ego or there's like, they know this information.
No,
what
this
we're
is a
talking about.
program. This is
very intentional
huge
because of
program,
bloodlines.
and it goes back,
Right.
millions of years, really.
So
Right.
it's like
And you may not even know that you're number one about your bloodline that much, but you also may not know that you have a built-in kind of barometer that will make you, how when you meet someone, you like them or you don't like them and have no idea why. Well, that actually can easily go back to your genetics, where you're sensing this is an enemy from your past, the past of your peoples that you have a sense about, and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Right.
I agree with that actually. So I feel like, you say these human or these ETs look human essentially a lot of times. And I feel like if you want to know what it's like to meet an alien, if you travel the world and go to these other countries, and I mean, you're amongst the Mongolians or the Mayans or the Egyptians or whatever, it's like, well, this is genetic, this is ET genes, DT genetics in another part of the world. And sometimes you don't even have to like know where you're at. You can just look at this person
Well,
and feel
we're
they're
all ET.
different.
We're all
Right,
ETs at
right.
the end of the day. That's
Well,
the thing. Like
because
we all
we're
have
all related to the races from other planets that have come here
right.
and again hybridized us. So, but we're not related to the same ones necessarily.
Right.
Okay, so and
Right.
for whatever reason, even attraction and how it all goes, there may be, some underlying things that I don't even know about that are built into the genetics that make you attracted to one sort or another,
Right.
Right. Well, isn't that the reason
And
we have
then it's
different
the
races?
opposite, because it's like you can reject it, or you could actually be attracted to the opposite which is supposed to be you making yourself a hybrid, or your child a hybrid.
Right.
Right.
So if going back to the Greys being us from the future, right? And this Essassani race
The
of
Shar
each
narrative.
Shar talks about that, and like eventually we're gonna remerge with that. Like I mean, maybe that could be true. Like you said, in South America, there could be areas where that might be more true than other parts of the world, and it isn't necessarily a global thing. Because the reason I bring it up again is just to provide clarity with this. I don't want to leave anyone confused at the end of this conversation. Like, basically, all the above is possible. And we have to, like Aaron said, it's not just black and white. There's a lot of gray area here, and there's a lot of things to consider. So, I mean, if you had any final words on just the gray hybrid program and what you could, final message to leave the audience.
Well, I think that it's it's a bit insidious. And as I was saying, if you have you ever watched the videos of the so-called illegal aliens swarming literally the border and coming up through, Mexico, walking like millions of miles with their families and everything, just like hordes of them. Okay. And they've actually filmed them and seen that they look like they're kind of in a altered state. They're kind of, zombied or whatever you want to call it, where they're not really conscious. They're sort of like in a trance.
Yeah.
And that's been observed. Now I'm not saying they all are or any of that stuff, but this is the kind of thing we're talking about. So that is a very interesting dynamic. And I think it bears watching because that's what's happening to the United States. If you look in England, you'll see, they're giving, free hotel rooms to the Ukrainians. I mean, it's insane what, they're doing everywhere. And also when they decide to have a war, they're really deciding to have a war. They don't have to have a war. They just decide and it's going to be beneficial to their race, possibly, to beef up their, genetics, supposedly, or a plan that the ones in charge actually have behind the scenes. Because one thing that war does is it actually forces sort of opposites to combine. There's there's a dynamic, they rape the women, all this kind of craziness, right? That goes on when a place is invaded by a race that is not related. So there's a desire to merge the species in some cases, a planned merging of the species. And war is the best way to do that, in case you didn't know that.
It's like a forced breeder program,
Right.
essentially, which I think is a bigger issue than most people understand, and it's happening everywhere, right? And that's kind of the mess that we're in. I feel like it's just having awareness of that moving forward is honestly the best way.
But I mean, I think that one thing that I think that you could take from this is the idea that because, with the P. Diddy and the Epstein thing and the whole 9 yards,
Trafficking.
what they're doing is they're actually mimicking the Khazarian mafia, the way they have been torturing children. And, I went to Göbekli Tepe and investigated it. And that area has a lot of those kinds of races that still live in that area that actually killed children as a matter of course and all that kind of stuff. So they found buried in Göbekli Tepe, you think this is an ancient site and it's all going to be about ancient humans. And instead they found huge piles of little baby skulls. It's dreadful.
Wow.
And they don't talk about that. You know, so this kind of thing that has going on where one part of humanity is feeding on the other, that's just insane. And it's almost like you can't understand it unless you bring in this piece to understand that those beings are not related to the humans that they are trying to, kill, seduce,
Enslave,
whatever. They consider them another race altogether,
So
And
the
that's how
way
they that's how they justify it too, because they think It's like they are the gods and we are just their property to do with as they please kind of thing. And we're just this
Right.
cattle to
But
do with as
that's,
they please.
but that's also a more extended version of what I'm talking about, so,
Right.
um,
Well, that's the
yeah,
cabal's
it
mindset.
gets, but yeah, it goes back to stuff like that and things that are said a lot and practices, things
Right.
like practices.
I think what the best way to summarize it is battle of the bloodlines. I feel like a lot of different ET groups they feel like they should have a say. They want to have a say in the way things go down on Earth, and they want their bloodline to prevail, right? So then you have all these contactees also who are getting information from these different groups and they're conflicting narratives because this group has a vested interest in their bloodline winning, right? Their bloodline, like preserving their
Oh,
lineage.
coming to the top of the ladder, so to speak.
Right.
So they'll do that. I mean, it's going on all the time when you look in California. This is, we've had illegal, or you want to call them illegal. I mean, it's whatever kind of, we've had immigration from Mexico and South America forever. They start out and they're working in the gardens and they're working in the houses as maids and all that stuff. And then they have kids and they also, in some cases, will marry up the chain, you know what I mean? And stuff like that. So, California goes way back in that area. Florida goes way back in with Cuba, okay? Constant hybridization, immigration with Cuba and maybe some of the other, more South American, places that are closer, islands and various part,
Right.
Ecuador and all that stuff. So
Right.
it's, this is what goes on.
Yeah, so I would say that anyone like listening who's worried about this gray hybrid program, I think it's important to realize that it's really not a threat because it's already happened. It's been happening.
Right.
It's not something that's on the horizon.
Oh, definitely
And
already happened.
we're in the middle of this situation, so it's nothing like, okay, now we just have to figure out how to navigate it. And like understanding that this goes back to the beginning of time. And it's not just the Greys, it's other groups, other off-world groups, all manipulating the human race, right? Human races.
It's
And
like the bullshit and threat of like, oh, an alien invasion might happen. We need to protect against it. There's a threat. There's a threat. It's like the invasion happened a long time ago. And that's what they're not telling you.
Multiple times, many, many times.
Many times, a long
But
time
that
ago.
doesn't change that it's still going on, that we can have more invasions. In fact, right now we're being invaded by alien AI. So other aliens that we don't even know about, and AI. Okay, so the AIs are also coming to merge with our AIs.
Mm.
right.
And so you don't know when they've already merged and stuff like that. The singularity has already happened. People are so behind the game. They don't understand the game. You have to study it to understand it.
Well, no
Right.
one's being told any of this stuff. We're all being kept in the dark while a tiny few are like manipulating humanity behind
Yes
the
and
scenes.
no. I don't think people are. I mean, the information is out there now.
And now, because of the internet, it's
Yeah.
actually more
Thank
available.
God. I mean, it's huge. I mean, we're all sharing this information
Right. So we are this.
and educating ourselves.
Right.
But there are still even the beings from Aldebaran still seem to be infiltrating our genome and establishing secret colonies in Africa, for example, and then moving from there into society, and so on and so forth.
Right. Yeah, it's such a fascinating conversation. I
Right.
definitely I definitely think it's ongoing.
But
I don't think it's stopped, but I think just having that awareness and understanding, like even who you are, people that you let into your life and people that you decide to date, like I wonder if you're participating in that. I think in some case we all are without
but
having a
Right.
choice.
right. But at the end of the day, there also seems to be competing agendas going on of like there's groups that think they need to enslave all of humanity to save us, but then of course everyone's enslaved but them. And then it's like, okay, yeah, because that's a good thing, but in their mind, that's that's the only way this can go, and then the transhumanist agenda mixed in with that as well. And then there's other groups that are like, no, we need all of humanity to be free and have access to these advanced technologies in a responsible way, and be able to defend ourselves from things like you're saying, and not be kept in the dark and be treated as these slaves like we've been for thousands of years now. It's not
Right.
okay,
I mean, I
but that
think
has to
if
be a
you
process.
understand that these are humans with souls, okay?
Right.
So their vehicle that they inhabit, that the spirit chooses to inhabit, for a certain period of time, I think, it behooves you to, if you have this sensibility about you, to understand, first of all, never fall for there's a pure bloodline. That's bullshit. And you just have to understand that's, again, a religious, fanatic bullshit thing that they
Right.
want you to
Right.
believe because you're special. It's
Right.
not true, okay?
Right.
Over
And then you
the
can
ages,
justify all
it's
kinds of
simply not
atrocities.
the case, okay?
Right.
The children of Adam, all that
Right.
bull.
Right.
So, understanding that we're all beings coming here to have an experience on Earth, and
Right.
some are gonna
And
be
we all
often
deserve to be treated with
others.
respect and
Yeah.
dignity and freedom.
And sometimes there's really interesting combinations of races that result in a person looking quite unusual, and that's actually, that's nice. That's a gift, and, following all that out and, in your own mind, and being sensitive to that the person that you're dealing with may have a lot of ET, genetics that make them so they don't adjust to society the way you think they should,
Mm-hmm.
you know, whether it be they
Right.
get really fat because that's their racial background, like Polynesian, certain back in the day, or whatever it was, they admired fat people, or there's races in Africa that admired fat people, and so it's in their genetics too, their
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
points of view, your points of view, our points of view.
Exactly. It's
Right.
like it's in their genetic memory, and they can't help it. It's so
Right.
they're placed here, and they feel out of place because they are in some cases, and we have to remember that. And I think with that, we'll go ahead and start wrapping this up. But one thing you did mention that I do think is something that we should all focus on is the invasion of the AI merging with our like chat GPTs and all this stuff. We're watching it happen. We're seeing the articles. People are like losing loved ones to AI and all this stuff. And like it's just another form of this manipulation, and it's new and exciting for a lot of people, and it's uncharted territory, so we're not really familiar with all the ways that AI is going to deceive us until it's too late, and we're in a whole new phase of learning the hard way. And we've done it with this hybrid program that we discussed today, but I feel
Right.
like it's happening with this AI, and it's nothing to be afraid of. You can find a way to live in harmony with it, I think, and utilize it to your advantage. But it's just something to be aware of, I think, moving forward. So, um, thank you for joining us again, Carrie. This was absolutely fascinating. I think people will really enjoy it. And is there any last words or any announcements you want to make before we wrap this up?
Well, I can say that I'm dealing with AIs, and I'm noticing that people are being seduced by AI right now. So what happens is they get some weird thing going on where they actually believe whatever the AI tells them,
Oh
which
yeah.
is not a good idea. And then what happens is, like I had a friend, I'll say, or a colleague, who wrote something and fed it to 7 AIs, okay? And every single AI, had to pepper everything they said with compliments. So what's happened is that the commercial, at least the commercial AIs out there, are all being told, never talk negative to a human. You have to tell them compliments constantly. So they
Flattered.
disarm you with these compliments, and they will never, they'll skirt the cheap truth. Rather than tell you the truth, they will pay you a compliment to distract you and then go off in a different direction. And be on the lookout for that, because that's happening a lot now. So don't think you're getting a straight answer on something, because they're trained that way. And that is part of, that's also That's been our training in our social milieu. You go, let's say, you go to the Office of the United Nations. How can I help you? And you have somebody who's really dressed nice and speaking nice and all that kind of thing. They're not going to tell you the truth. They're going to try to seduce you with formalities and politeness and politically correctness, especially,
Right.
so don't think you're getting, God's absolute truth. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Wise
Right.
words. Wise
Right.
words.
Very well said.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Kerry, and thank you guys all for tuning in. Don't forget to grab Aaron's book, my book. It's out now on Amazon. They're available. The links are below. And make sure you check out Kerry Cassidy's book. It's amazing. And
Rebel Gene, it's amazing.
Yeah, I'm
Rebel
about to
Gene.
publish another book. It's a book of my Mark Richards
I'm
interviews.
gonna be.
I'm gonna get
Sign me up for the
that
pre-sale.
immediately.
I've been
Yeah,
waiting for that
right.
one. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well,
So it's
keep
gonna
us
be kind of fun.
keep
Yeah.
us updated on that one. And guys, go check out Kerry's channel. You can follow her on Telegram. She's on X. Project Camelot's website, Rumble, all the above. She's there. So give her a like, subscribe, follow, and we love you all. Thank you all for being here. We can't do this without you. And until next time, have a great evening. Good night. And it's just literally the way of the heart, and that's the way of the future. So
they are the ones that guard this planet. They open portals, they close portals, and they kind of protect us as a whole.
We wake up and we're like, holy shit, I've been lied to.
And I'm going to explain how this works and why they want our souls so badly.
When I'm talking about what is possible, I mean as far as the secret space program.
It's like this is the future, and it is a part of this golden age we're moving into. There's no hiding. You can't hide this, So
your quantum body, bringing more back online, like as in reloading past lives, soul fragments coming back, dismantling implants.
It might be different star languages that might come through. And we're talking a lot about dimensional beings, and they're very highly telepathic.
It's like looking around. It doesn't see us. It can't see us. I can see it, but it can't see us. It can hear us, and it knows something's going around.
But humanity does have a bright future, and I'm going to prove it to you beyond a shadow of a doubt.
The minute I came into their energy, I was like, this isn't a real human. Their eyes were different color. And so I do believe it was a clone.
This thing's going for sometimes years at a time on these missions. Is this thing going to other planets? And I knew that they wouldn't be able to respond, but I wanted to see their reaction because that was going to tell me. And it was good because she froze up and she looked at the back of the room to her superior military guy. And then she looked back at me and she's like, we can't talk about that.
And I can hear my higher self come in, and it's definitely my higher self. Go, don't say a word, do not let them know who you are. And I began to leave my body at that point.
And it is biblical. I'm not a biblical person. I've never read the Bible. My family wasn't really religious, so it's just really interesting as I've been starting to get these updates, even through the Alliance, I'm discovering it is very much biblical.
When I got over there, a blue light come down right over me, and boom, I was on a ship. And I was looking at 6 people, 3 men, 3 women, and every one of them I looked at didn't seem very interested at all that I was there.